There are towns that rest quietly in the folds of the world, places where time moves slowly and the light falls softly through ancient trees. Hollow Creek was such a place, nestled in a valley where morning mist clung to the streets like a secret whispered too many times. For decades, this small town existed in a strange sort of peace, the kind of peace that comes not from harmony but from silence, from agreement, from the careful, deliberate choice to look away. The houses stood in neat rows, their porches painted in fading pastels, their windows reflecting nothing but sky. Families gathered at Sunday services, nodded to one another at the market, shared recipes and pleasantries over white picket fences. And beneath it all, beneath the surface of ordinary life, something else moved in the darkness. Not with violence or urgency, but with the patient rhythm of water wearing away stone. Secrets have weight, you see. They settle into foundations, seep into floorboards, become part of the very architecture of a place. And Hollow Creek carried its secrets the way old trees carry years, silently, deeply, in rings that only reveal themselves when something is finally cut open. Tonight, we will walk through this town together, slowly, calmly, as we discover what happens when silence can no longer hold. We will move through these revelations not with shock, but with the gentle inevitability of dawn breaking after the longest night. Let your breathing slow as we begin. Let your body settle into stillness. There is nothing to fear in this story, only the quiet unfolding of truth, and the strange comfort that comes when what was hidden finally finds the light. Close your eyes now and see Hollow Creek as it was on that October morning when everything began to change. The old riverside building had stood empty for 15 years, its windows boarded over, its brick facade crumbling gently back toward the earth. No one spoke much about why it had closed, why the renovations planned in 2008 had been quietly abandoned, why the property changed hands 3 times without anyone ever quite managing to do anything with it. It simply existed in that liminal space that small towns understand so well. The space of things we've collectively agreed not to discuss. But nothing stays empty forever. In the autumn of 2023, a development company from 2 counties over purchased the building, unaware of its history, seeing only potential and square footage. The crew that arrived that October morning smelled like coffee and sawdust, their voices echoing through rooms that had held only silence for so long. They moved through the first floor easily enough, marking walls for demolition, testing the structural integrity of support beams. But it was in the basement, behind a false wall covered in old permit notices and faded advertisements from the 1980s, that they found the entrance to a room that shouldn't have existed. The door was narrow, painted the same color as the wall around it, designed to disappear. And inside, preserved in the cool darkness, were boxes. Dozens of boxes, stacked with the care of someone who intended to return. And in the first box they opened, wrapped in oilcloth and bound with twine, was a journal. The handwriting inside was cramped and precise, dated entries stretching back to 1971. And even the foreman, a practical man not given to dramatics, felt something shift as he read the first page. Some discoveries, you see, arrive with their own weight, their own gravity. They pull at the fabric of things. By lunchtime, the foreman had made a call. By evening, the journal was in the hands of the local historical society. And by the following morning, Hollow Creek began to remember what it had worked so hard to forget. The journal belonged to Margaret Holloway, a name that meant little to anyone under 60, but to the older residents of Hollow Creek, it landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples across decades. Margaret had been a schoolteacher, quiet and unmarried, the kind of woman who lived at the edges of town life, present but never quite central. She had disappeared in 1979, her house left tidy, her car still in the driveway. At the time, the explanation given was that she'd gone to care for a sick relative out of state. No one questioned it too deeply. Small towns are practiced in the art of accepting simple explanations, especially when the truth might prove more complicated than comfort allows. But the journal told a different story. In careful, dated entries, Margaret had documented something she'd witnessed in the summer of 1970. Something involving 3 of the town's founding families. The Wexlers, who owned the bank, the Carruthers, who ran the lumber mill, and the Ashfords, whose patriarch served as mayor for 23 years. She had seen something near the old mill pond late one July night, something that involved a truck, canvas-wrapped bundles, and the kind of purposeful silence that speaks louder than words. The entries didn't explain everything. Margaret herself seemed uncertain, afraid to commit the full truth to paper. But she wrote around it, circling the edges of revelation, like someone walking around a hole in the ground, describing its dimensions without ever quite looking in. She mentioned names, dates, places where one might look if one dared. And most troubling of all, she documented conversations she'd overheard, fragments of guilt and justification that suggested whatever happened that night in 1970 was not the beginning, but merely one event in a longer pattern. The Historical Society sat with the journal for 3 days before deciding what to do. They were not investigators, not journalists. They were volunteers, mostly retired, who cataloged donations and organized the annual Heritage Festival. But there are moments when ordinary people must decide whether to carry something forward or let it rest. And slowly, carefully, they began to reach out to others, to ask quiet questions, to see who else might remember Margaret Holloway and what she might have known. Memory in small towns is a curious thing. It exists in layers like sediment. The official version sits on top, clean and agreed upon, the story told at school programs and historical markers. But beneath that, if you dig carefully, you find other layers, things people remember but don't speak about, events that everyone experienced differently, depending on which side of town they lived on, which family they belonged to, which secrets they were keeping or being kept from. In the weeks following the journal's discovery, these layers began to shift. It started small. A woman in her 70s mentioned to her daughter that she'd always wondered about the Hendersons, a family of 4 who left town suddenly in 1973. A retired postal worker recalled letters that arrived for Margaret Holloway for years after she'd supposedly moved away, letters he'd been told to return to sender by the postmaster. A man who'd worked at the lumber mill in the early 70s admitted he'd been told never to go near the old mill pond, never to ask why. These fragments, shared quietly at first, began to form a pattern. And the pattern suggested that several families had vanished from Hollow Creek over a 10-year period, from 1970 to 1980, families that were later explained away as having moved for work or returning to relatives, or simply seeking opportunities elsewhere. No one had connected these departures before, or perhaps no one had dared to. But now, with Margaret's journal providing a focal point, the connections became impossible to ignore. The Historical Society compiled a list. 7 families, 23 people in total, all departures marked by the same characteristics: sudden, quiet, and followed by the swift sale of property to one of 3 families. The Wexlers, the Caruthers, the Ashfords, always one of these 3, buying homes and land at prices that seemed, in retrospect, remarkably low. And always the same assurance to neighbors: the families had left willingly, happily even, seeking better futures. No forwarding addresses were kept. No one ever heard from any of them again. Breathe slowly now, as we hold this knowledge. Feel how truth can be both heavy and liberating. Let your body sink deeper into rest as we continue to uncover what Hollow Creek kept hidden for so long. As winter settled over Hollow Creek, the past and present began to blur in that particular way that comes when secrets are finally spoken aloud. The town seemed quieter than usual, as if it were holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Snow fell softly on the old mill site, on the riverside building where the journal had been found, on the neat streets where families who knew things and families who didn't lived side by side, all suspended in the strange space between revelation and consequence. The Historical Society continued their careful work, now joined by a journalist from the regional newspaper and a graduate student studying local history. They worked slowly, respectfully, understanding that they were not simply uncovering facts, but touching wounds that had never properly healed. They found property records that showed the pattern of acquisitions. They discovered that several of the departed families had been activists of a sort, people who'd asked questions about the mill's waste disposal, about chemical runoff, about the strange smell near the mill pond that summer of 1970. They'd been people who might have stood in the way of something, who might have refused to stay quiet when staying quiet was required. And piece by piece, the architecture of silence revealed itself. Not a single conspiracy, dramatic and organized, but something more insidious, a network of agreements, favors owed and collected, threats implied rather than stated, and the gradual communal decision that some truths were too dangerous to acknowledge. As you rest now, let your mind drift like snow falling on these old streets. Let yourself settle into the rhythm of discovery, the gentle, inevitable uncovering of what was buried. There is peace in this, strange as it may seem. Peace in the ending of pretense, in the slow return of truth. Hollow Creek is changing, slowly, softly, as all things must change when light finally reaches what has lived too long in shadow. And as this first part of our story comes to rest, so too can your thoughts, your worries, your need to understand everything at once. Simply breathe, simply rest. The story will continue, but for now, let sleep begin to find you, as gently and inevitably as dawn. And so we drift deeper into the story of Hollow Creek, where the morning light filters through curtains of mist, revealing what was always there beneath the surface. The old bank building stands on Main Street, its limestone facade weathered by decades of rain and sun, its windows dark and hollow like eyes that have seen too much and chosen not to speak. For 40 years, Cornelius Wexler sat behind the mahogany desk on the second floor, approving loans, shaking hands, attending every town council meeting with the same gentle smile and measured words. Everyone trusted him. Everyone believed in the solidity of his presence, the way you might believe in the ground beneath your feet, never questioning what might lie deeper still. When the building was finally sold after his death, when the renovation crews arrived with their tools and blueprints, no one expected anything more than dust and old paperwork. But beneath the foundation, behind a wall that shouldn't have been there, they found a door. Such a simple thing, really. A door that had been sealed shut with brick and mortar, hidden behind shelving that had stood untouched since 1979. The workers might have ignored it, might have built right over it, but curiosity is a persistent thing, even in a town that had learned not to ask questions. So they broke through, and in the cool darkness of that hidden room, illuminated by the harsh glare of work lights, they found filing cabinets, row after row of them, arranged with meticulous care, each drawer labeled in Cornelius Wexler's careful script. And as the dust settled, as the first cabinet was opened, the truth began its slow, inevitable emergence. Let your breath settle with this revelation, slow and steady. There is no rush in this story, no urgency that requires your alertness. Simply listen and let the words wash over you like water over smooth stones. The documents told their story in numbers and dates, in careful ledger entries that spanned decades. Cornelius Wexler had been moving money, small amounts at first, then larger sums as the years progressed and his confidence grew. But this was not the simple greed of a man who wanted luxury. No, this embezzlement had purpose, direction, a goal that revealed itself slowly as investigators pieced together the puzzle of land deeds and shell companies. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, parcels of land north of town had been quietly purchased through intermediaries, properties that seemed worthless at the time, marshy lowlands that no farmer wanted and no developer could use. But Cornelius knew something others didn't. He knew about the waste. The chemical plant 30 miles upriver had been dumping for years, and certain people in Hollow Creek, people with connections, people who attended the same quiet meetings in the bank's back room, had arranged for additional dumping in those northern lowlands. Arranged it, facilitated it, and profited from it, all while the town's water supply slowly, imperceptibly began to change. There were illnesses, of course, cancers that clustered in certain neighborhoods, children born with complications that doctors couldn't quite explain. But in a small town, in an era before the internet connected every story to a pattern, these seemed like individual tragedies, sad but separate, unconnected threads that no one thought to weave together. And Cornelius, sitting in his office with the afternoon light slanting across his desk, approved the loans for medical bills, expressed his sympathy, and continued filling out his ledgers with the same steady hand. Rest now in the stillness of this knowledge. Let it settle like sediment in still water, requiring nothing from you but your gentle attention. Your breathing slows, your body grows heavier, more relaxed as the story continues its patient unfolding. In the hidden room, they found photographs, black and white images of men in suits standing beside trucks in the darkness, their faces turned away from the camera or obscured by shadow. Dates written on the backs in pencil: August 1971, March 1973, November 1976. The trucks belonged to the chemical company, but the land they were parked on, the land where barrels were being unloaded in the deep hours of night, belonged to those shell companies, those phantom organizations that all traced back eventually to Cornelius Wexler and 3 other families: the Hendersons, who owned the lumber mill, the Graves family, who ran the newspaper, and the Bishops, whose construction company built half the houses in Hollow Creek. 4 families, bound together by shared guilt and shared profit, maintaining their secret with the same care that Cornelius maintained his ledgers. When the state investigators arrived, when the documents were photographed and cataloged and entered into official records, the town held its breath. These were not strangers, not distant villains from some faraway place. These were names on the Little League scoreboard, on the memorial plaques at the library, on the historic registry of founding families. The cognitive dissonance was almost soothing in its own way, because accepting it required letting go of so many certainties, so many assumptions about how the world worked and who could be trusted. And in letting go, there was a kind of release, a loosening of the grip that old stories had maintained. The Wexler house still stands on Elm Street, its front porch sagging slightly, its paint peeling in long, slow curls. Cornelius's widow had died years before the discovery, taking her own knowledge to the grave. Perhaps she knew everything, perhaps she knew nothing. The house keeps its secrets still, patient and silent as the earth itself. And you, listening now, can feel that same patience, that same silence settling into your own body. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Simply rest here, in this moment, as the story breathes around you. The water supply, they discovered, had been compromised for nearly 2 decades before the dumping stopped in 1982. The chemicals had leached slowly through the soil, a gradual poisoning that affected some wells more than others, some neighborhoods more severely than the rest. By the time anyone connected the dots, by the time the patterns became undeniable, the statute of limitations on many of the crimes had expired. Cornelius was dead. 2 of his co-conspirators had passed away. Only Thomas Henderson remained, 93 years old and living in the county nursing home, his memory fractured by dementia, unable to stand trial, unable to offer anything but confused fragments of recollection. The frustration of justice delayed is a bitter thing, but even bitterness can fade, given time, given patience, given the slow work of understanding. The town installed new water lines, tested every well, offered medical monitoring to families who had lived in the affected areas. The newspaper, no longer owned by the Graves family, ran special editions detailing the timeline, the evidence, the scope of what had been hidden. And people read these stories in the same cafes where they'd shared coffee with the Wexlers, in the same library where portraits of founding families still hung on the walls. Some portraits were quietly removed, others remained, but with new plaques beneath them, plaques that told fuller stories, stories that included both the good and the terrible, the generous and the corrupt. Because people, the town was learning, are rarely just one thing. They are capable of kindness and cruelty, of love and betrayal, often within the same breath, the same day, the same quietly beating heart. As you listen, feel how your own heart beats, steady and slow, requiring no thought, no effort. Feel how sleep moves closer with each word, each gentle phrase. The story continues, but you need not hold on to every detail. Let it flow through you like water, like time, like the inevitable movement from waking into rest. In the end, what the discovery beneath the bank revealed was not just the crimes of 4 families, but the architecture of silence that had protected them. It revealed how a small town works when everyone has something to lose, when reputation matters more than truth, when the cost of speaking up seems greater than the cost of looking away. But it also revealed that even the deepest secrets have a lifespan, that concrete and brick cannot hold back truth forever. That time itself is the ultimate excavator, patient and relentless. As this second part of the story settles into quiet, feel how your own body settles more deeply into comfort, how your muscles release their last holdings of tension, how your breathing becomes slower still, more rhythmic, more like the breathing of someone already dreaming. The Wexler family's secrets are no longer hidden. They exist now in official records, in news archives, in the collective memory of Hollow Creek. And in being known, they have lost some of their power, the way shadows lose their menace when you finally turn on the light. There will be more secrets yet to uncover, more stories to unfold, but for now, in this gentle pause between revelations, let yourself drift. Let the images fade to darkness behind your closed eyes. Let the words become softer, further away, like voices heard from another room as you slip towards sleep. The bank building will be renovated, eventually. The hidden room will be sealed again, or perhaps left open as a reminder. The water flows clean now through new pipes. And the story, like the town, like your own consciousness, moves slowly from exposure toward rest, from waking toward the deep, restorative darkness where all stories dissolve into dreams, and all dreams dissolve into sleep. Rest now. Simply rest. The secrets of Hollow Creek will keep until morning, and by then, you will have traveled far from here, into places beyond words, beyond stories, beyond everything but peace. And yet, morning has not come. Not quite yet. There is still more to understand, more threads to follow through the quiet darkness of Hollow Creek's long memory. The secrets we have uncovered so far, the journal, the hidden room, the poisoned water, these were only the visible branches of something much deeper, roots that spread beneath the entire town like the underground rivers that flow beneath limestone, silent and unseen. In the drowsy space between waking and sleeping, we descend a little further into the network of silence that held this small town together for so many years, a web spun from whispered agreements and averted eyes, from knowing nods and carefully chosen words. Picture the center of town as it was 30 years ago, 40, 50. The same streets you might find in any small American town, tree-lined and tranquil, where everyone knew everyone, where families had lived for generations, where the same names appeared on storefronts and gravestones, on deeds and diplomas. The Hollow Creek Public Library stood then as it stands now, a modest brick building with tall windows that let in the afternoon light, casting long golden rectangles across worn wooden floors. And there behind the circulation desk, year after year, decade after decade, sat Eleanor Marsh, the town librarian, her hair graying slowly from brown to silver, her glasses perched on her nose, her fingers moving with practiced grace across card catalogs and date stamps. Eleanor was so quiet that people sometimes forgot she was there. She would sit in her corner of the library, nearly motionless, while around her the town conducted its business in hushed tones. The library was always a place for hushed tones. What no one fully understood was that Eleanor heard everything. Every conversation between the mayor and the bank president. Every whispered argument between husband and wife in the local history section. Every confession made by teenagers who thought they were alone among the stacks. Eleanor listened, and Eleanor remembered. And most remarkably of all, Eleanor wrote it all down. In a series of leather-bound journals hidden in the library's basement, journals that would not be discovered until years after her death, Eleanor documented the secret life of Hollow Creek with the meticulous care of a scholar, the detachment of a scientist, and perhaps, just perhaps, the quiet judgment of someone who knew she was the only witness to truth. Let your breathing slow as we think about Eleanor in her library, the scratch of her pen on paper, the weight of knowing pressing gently down like a blanket, heavy but not uncomfortable. She was not the only keeper of secrets, merely the most thorough. Sheriff Thomas Brennan, who wore his badge for 32 years, understood his role differently. Where Eleanor collected the truth, Thomas buried it. Not violently, not dramatically, but with the patient, methodical approach of a man planting a garden, covering seeds with dark earth, tamping it down gently, watering it occasionally to help it settle. When calls came in about strange sounds near the old Wexler property, Thomas would drive out slowly, his patrol car kicking up dust on the rural roads, and he would look around with a flashlight, finding nothing, reporting nothing. When teenagers disappeared, And they did disappear, though rarely, just often enough to notice. Thomas would file reports that led nowhere, interviews that concluded with shrugs, investigations that dissolved like morning mist. He was not a cruel man. That is important to understand as you drift deeper into sleep. He was not cruel. He was simply afraid, as so many were afraid, of what truth might cost. And somewhere in that fear, in that daily choice to look away, he found a kind of terrible peace. The peace of not having to act, not having to choose, not having to stand against the current. Let that understanding wash over you now, the way fear can become familiar, comfortable even, like an old coat worn soft with age. The web of complicity extended beyond Eleanor's careful documentation and Thomas's deliberate blindness. It reached into examining rooms and hospital corridors, into places we trust implicitly because we must, because when we are vulnerable and ill, we have no choice but to trust. Dr. Harrison Vaught had his practice on Main Street, above the pharmacy, in a suite of rooms that smelled of antiseptic and old carpet, where the waiting room magazines were always several months out of date, and the receptionist, Mrs. Chen, would greet you by name before you even signed in. Dr. Vaught delivered most of the babies born in Hollow Creek for 3 decades. He set broken bones, diagnosed pneumonia, prescribed medication, signed death certificates, and in the margins of all this ordinary care, he kept another set of records, informal and unwritten, records of what he had agreed not to see. When workers from the Wexler properties came to him with symptoms of poisoning, tremors, nausea, strange rashes, inexplicable exhaustion, he would write in his charts that they had the flu or a virus or simply stress. When children developed respiratory problems in clusters that mapped perfectly to proximity to the old industrial sites, he noted the asthma, prescribed inhalers, and never mentioned patterns. He falsified medical reports when it mattered, softening language, omitting details, misattributing causes, and in return his practice thrived. His own children went to good colleges, his wife wore nice jewelry. The weight of his complicity settled around his shoulders so gradually that he barely noticed it, like snow accumulating on a winter night, silent and steady, until morning reveals how much has fallen. Breathe in slowly now, breathing in the sadness of good people making bad choices, and breathe out, releasing any judgment, any tension. This is a story, only a story, and we are here simply to witness, to understand, to let the truth be told so that it can finally rest. Dr. Vaught, Sheriff Brennan, Eleanor Marsh, they were not villains in any simple sense. They were ordinary people caught in a system that rewarded silence and punished honesty, that protected power and sacrificed the powerless. The network functioned because everyone played their part, because each person's silence made the next person's silence easier, necessary even. The mayor knew not to ask certain questions. The newspaper editor knew which stories not to pursue. The teachers knew which family histories not to mention in local history class. The ministers knew which sins not to name from their pulpits. And the ordinary citizens, the families going about their daily lives, they knew in the way people always know, in the peripheral vision of their understanding, that something was not right, had never been right, but that speaking about it would cost them more than staying silent. So they stayed silent, and they raised their children to stay silent, and the silence became a kind of inheritance, passed down like the family silver or grandfather's watch, valuable because it kept the peace, such as the peace was. Feel yourself sinking deeper now, your body heavy and relaxed, your mind drifting through the quiet streets of Hollow Creek, past the library where Eleanor's journals waited in the darkness, past the sheriff's station where unsolved cases gathered dust, past Dr. Vaught's office where the medical records told only half-truths. In this drowsy state, you understand that the network of silence was also a network of fear, and fear held hands with shame, and shame whispered to guilt, and all of them together created a kind of paralysis. A stillness that looked like peace, but was only the absence of courage. Yet, even in this understanding, there is something soothing, something almost restful, in acknowledging the full truth of human weakness, human fear, human complicity. The connections between these people, Eleanor, Thomas, Harrison, and so many others, formed a pattern that could only be seen from a distance, like constellations that reveal themselves only when you step back and look at the whole sky, rather than individual stars. Let your eyes grow heavy now as we trace these connections through the drowsy decades, following the invisible threads that bound the town together in its conspiracy of quiet. Eleanor knew about Thomas's deliberately incomplete investigations because she overheard him talking to his wife in the library's reference section one evening after closing, when they thought they were alone. Thomas knew about Dr. Vought's falsified records because the doctor had confessed it to him one night after too much whiskey at the Elks Lodge, seeking perhaps some kind of absolution or at least acknowledgement from another man who carried similar weight. Dr. Vaught knew about Eleanor's journals because she had once shown him a page in a moment of exhaustion or perhaps defiance when he came to the library to research a medical question, and she simply needed someone else to know that she was watching, that she was keeping score, that someone would remember. They were all keeping score in their different ways, all maintaining their own private accounts of right and wrong, even as publicly they enabled the very wrongs they were recording. This is the paradox at the heart of Hollow Creek's long silence, that those who kept the silence were often the same ones who most carefully documented the truth. Perhaps they told themselves that someday someone would find these records, would understand, would reveal everything. Perhaps that possibility made the present complicity more bearable. Perhaps they were simply hedging their bets against history's judgment, or perhaps, in some deeper way, they were all asleep, moving through their lives in a kind of somnambulistic state, aware and unaware at the same time, knowing and not knowing, seeing and choosing blindness, all simultaneously, the way we sometimes dream that we are dreaming and yet remain inside the dream. Let yourself drift deeper into this state now, this twilight place where contradictions coexist peacefully, where opposing truths can both be real, where the boundaries between right and wrong blur into shades of gray that blend and shift like smoke. The network of silence extended even into families, into the most intimate relationships. Children learned not to ask why their parents seemed anxious. Spouses learned not to question sudden windfalls or unexplained absences. Siblings kept each other's secrets the way they had since childhood, instinctively, without even discussing it. The town council held meetings where the most important decisions were never voted on, never minuted, sometimes never even explicitly stated, just understood through meaningful glances and subtle nods, through what was not said rather than what was said. The Chamber of Commerce promoted Hollow Creek as a place of small-town values and community spirit, and in a strange way, they were not lying. The community spirit was real. The values were simply not the ones being advertised. The real values were loyalty above truth, silence above justice, protection of the collective above individual conscience. These were the actual foundations on which Hollow Creek was built, the bedrock beneath the bedrock, deeper than the limestone caves, deeper than the underground rivers, deep as bone, deep as blood, deep as the roots of the oldest trees in the old family's graveyards. Rest here for a moment in this understanding, letting it settle over you like a heavy quilt on a cold night, warm and weighty. There is no need to judge anymore, no need to decide who was right or wrong. We are simply here to witness, to understand, to let these secrets finally be spoken so they can finally rest. And as they rest, so can you. Your breathing slow and steady, your heartbeat calm, your mind drifting through the network of Hollow Creek's past, like a ghost moving through walls, seeing everything, touching nothing, simply observing the intricate architecture of complicity that held a town together for so very long. As you sink even deeper into sleep, we can look more closely at the mechanism of the silence itself, at how it functioned day by day, year by year, how it was maintained and reinforced through countless small acts and tiny omissions. The silence had its own grammar, its own vocabulary. There were certain phrases people learned to use. That's just how things are done here. Best not to make waves. What's past is past. We don't talk about that. Every family has its problems. Let sleeping dogs lie. These phrases were handed down like folk wisdom, repeated so often they took on the weight of truth, the authority of tradition. Children heard them and absorbed them before they even understood what they meant. And by the time they were old enough to question, the habit of not questioning was already formed, smooth and comfortable as a stone worn by water. The silence was also maintained through strategic kindness. When someone seemed likely to speak out to break ranks, there would be an intervention of sorts. Not threatening, not violent, but gentle, almost loving. A respected elder would have a quiet conversation. A favor would be offered. A reminder would be given of all the good things that silence had preserved, all the families who had been protected, all the stability and peace that had been maintained. Think of your children, they would say. Think of what you would lose. And it worked, again and again, because what they said was true. Speaking out would cost everything. Silence cost only the soul, and the soul's bill came due slowly, over decades, so slowly you could pretend the cost wasn't real. Feel your own body now, so relaxed, so heavy, sinking into the surface beneath you as if into deep water, peaceful water, warm and dark. The network of silence in Hollow Creek was also sustained by a kind of collective magical thinking, a shared delusion that if something wasn't spoken about, it wasn't quite real. The contaminated water supply, if we don't mention it, perhaps it's not really making people sick. The embezzlement, if we don't investigate, perhaps the money wasn't really stolen. The disappearances, if we don't ask too many questions, perhaps those people simply moved away, started over somewhere else. Perhaps they're happy, and we just don't know it. This is how humans protect themselves from unbearable knowledge, by building walls of perhaps and maybe, by leaving room for doubt even when certainty is staring them in the face. And in a small town, where everyone depends on everyone else, where your reputation is your currency, and social exile is a kind of death, this collective delusion becomes even more powerful, even more necessary. You could not survive in Hollow Creek without participating in the shared reality, and the shared reality required not seeing certain things, not knowing certain truths, not making certain connections. Those who couldn't accept this eventually left. The town expelled its truth-tellers not through force but through isolation, through the gradual withdrawal of friendship and commerce and community, until the dissenters found themselves utterly alone, standing in the middle of town square, shouting at people who simply walked past as if they couldn't hear, as if the dissenter were invisible, or perhaps had never existed at all. And eventually those truth-tellers would leave, would move to cities where anonymity was possible, where you didn't need everyone to like you in order to live your life. And Hollow Creek would close over the gap they left behind like water closing over a stone, smooth and seamless as if they had never been there. Let this image fill your drowsy mind. The calm surface of water, reflecting sky, revealing nothing of its depth, nothing of what lies beneath, perfect in its placid stillness, beautiful even in its deception. The network of silence was, in its own way, a kind of ecosystem, complex and self-sustaining, with each part supporting every other part, all of it balanced in a delicate equilibrium that had taken generations to establish, and that seemed as if it could last forever, or at least until everyone involved was safely dead and beyond accountability. And yet, as you drift even further into the soft embrace of sleep, we must acknowledge that every network, no matter how carefully constructed, contains within itself the seeds of its own unraveling. The very thoroughness of Eleanor's documentation, Thomas's careful non-investigations, Harrison's detailed false records, all of these were evidence, waiting. The more elaborate the silence, the more threads there were to pull, and it would take only one thread, one person willing to pull it, to begin the slow collapse of the entire structure. But that pulling has not happened yet, not in this moment of the story, not in this deep, quiet place where we find ourselves now, suspended between revelation and rest, between the exposure of secrets and the peace of sleep. For now, we simply float in the understanding of how it all worked, how the network held together through fear and kindness, through strategic forgetting and careful remembering, through loyalty and complicity and the very human desire to protect what we love even when what we love is deeply flawed. Let your breathing be very slow now, in and out, like gentle waves on a distant shore, steady and peaceful, requiring no effort, no thought. The network of silence in Hollow Creek was like a spell, and like all spells, it required constant maintenance, constant belief, constant reinforcement. When one person wavered, others would gather around to strengthen the enchantment. When evidence appeared, it would be explained away, reinterpreted, lost, destroyed, or simply ignored until everyone agreed to forget it had ever existed. This is how reality itself becomes malleable, how shared truth is constructed, not through what is real, but through what everyone agrees to believe is real. And for decades, Hollow Creek agreed, collectively and silently, on a version of reality that protected the powerful, that preserved social order, that allowed life to continue in its predictable patterns. Seasons changing, children growing, businesses operating, churches holding services, the library circulating books, the doctor seeing patients, the sheriff patrolling streets, everything normal, everything fine, everything perfectly, painfully, preciously normal. You are so deeply relaxed now, so close to the boundary where sleep becomes absolute, where consciousness dissolves into pure rest. Let yourself feel the weight of Hollow Creek's silence, but feel it as something distant now, something that belongs to another time, another place, a story being told in a voice that grows softer with each word, fainter with each breath. The network of silence is revealing itself to you not as a horror, but as a strange, sad, very human creation. A collective agreement born of weakness rather than strength, of fear rather than courage, of the desperate desire for peace, even if that peace is false, even if underneath the calm surface, poison is spreading through the water, through the soil, through the very foundations of community and trust. And now, as this act draws to its close, as the story of the network of silence reaches its resting place for this night, feel yourself drifting away from Hollow Creek, away from Eleanor's library and Thomas's patrol car and Harrison's examination room, away from all the whispered conversations and kept secrets, floating upward and outward into a space of pure rest, where there are no secrets anymore, because there are no words, no thoughts, no stories, only the deep, soft darkness of sleep, only the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, only peace, endless and complete. The network held, for so long it held, until one day it wouldn't anymore. But that day is not tonight. Tonight is only for rest, for letting go, for allowing everything you have learned to settle into the quiet places of your mind, where dreams are made, where understanding becomes part of you, without effort, without strain. Rest now in the network, in the web of connection and complicity, feeling it not as something threatening, but as something almost like a hammock, cradling you, holding you suspended in the gentlest way, in the space between knowing and forgetting, between waking and sleeping, between story and dream. And as you rest there, held and safe, the secrets of Hollow Creek continue their slow journey toward the light, but so slowly, so gently, that you need not wait for them, need not worry about them, need only sleep, deeply and peacefully, completely and utterly, now and through the night, into dreams that ask nothing of you, that require nothing, that give only rest, only peace, only the soft, dark silence that is not complicity but simply sleep, beautiful sleep, endless sleep. And from that deep sleep, that beautiful silence, something begins to stir in Hollow Creek, something gentle and inevitable, like the first light of dawn touching the edge of a darkened window. The younger generation, those who inherited the weight of secrets they never asked to carry, begin to speak. It starts with a whisper, a single voice at a town meeting, a young woman standing to say what her grandmother could never say, and then another voice joins, and another, a chorus not of anger, but of quiet determination, of needing the truth more than they need the comfort of pretended ignorance. You can almost hear it, that first confession, breaking the stillness like a stone dropped into water, creating ripples that spread outward, touching every shore, every hidden corner of this small town, where everyone knows everyone, where every secret has 1,000 keepers. And the elderly residents of Hollow Creek, those who have carried these burdens for 40 years, 50 years, a lifetime of looking away and saying nothing, they begin to feel something shift inside them, a loosening of the grip they've held so tightly on the past. One by one, they come forward. The rhythm of it is slow, hypnotic, soothing in its inevitability. First, it's old Mrs. Patterson, who worked at the town hall for 35 years, her voice trembling but steady as she describes the documents she was told to lose, the files that disappeared on quiet Friday afternoons when everyone else had gone home. Then it's Mr. Holloway, the former postmaster, confessing to letters that never reached their destinations, envelopes that contained evidence, pleas for help, reports to state agencies that he was instructed to burn in the furnace behind the post office, and he did. He burned them all, watching the paper curl and blacken, the words turning to ash. The confessions come in waves, gentle and rhythmic, like breathing, like the tide, inevitable and strangely peaceful, each one releasing a small portion of the pressure that has built up over decades. Each truth spoken aloud, making the next one easier, creating a pattern, a ritual of release that begins to feel almost meditative in its repetition. And you, listening to this, you need not carry their burden. You need only let the rhythm of their voices lull you deeper, the pattern of confession and acknowledgement becoming a kind of lullaby, a repetitive and soothing cadence that asks nothing of you, that simply flows over you like water, like darkness, like the peaceful inevitability of sleep. The confessions continue, day after day, a steady rhythm that the town begins to expect, to anticipate, to find strangely comforting in its predictability. Every evening at 7 o'clock, someone new stands in the community center, the same wooden podium, the same circle of folding chairs, the same quiet gathering of neighbors and strangers who come to bear witness. There is Mrs. Chen, who ran the town's only diner for 40 years, admitting that she served as a messenger, carrying sealed envelopes between the founding families, never asking what was inside, never wanting to know, simply delivering them with the coffee and pie, a willing participant in the machinery of silence. There is old Tom Garrett, the former school janitor, speaking softly about the records he was paid to remove from filing cabinets late at night, medical files and academic transcripts that told stories someone wanted erased, students who disappeared from school rosters as though they had never existed at all. Each confession follows the same pattern. The approach to the podium, the clearing of the throat, the trembling beginning that gradually steadies as the words find their rhythm, the relief that shows in shoulders that slowly lower, in faces that soften, in voices that grow quieter and more peaceful, as the truth finally emerges after decades of containment. And the pattern is soothing, deeply soothing. This repetitive ritual of acknowledgement, the sameness of it, the predictability, the way each story follows the arc of the one before, rising and falling like breath, like waves, like the gentle progression from wakefulness to sleep. You can feel it working on you, this rhythm, this pattern, drawing you down into a state of acceptance and rest, where nothing is required of you, where you need only listen to the cadence of voices, speaking truths that belong to another time, another place, another world that grows more distant with each slow breath you take. The community center becomes a kind of sanctuary, a place where the darkness of secrets meets the light of acknowledgement. But even this meeting is gentle, shadowed, lit by soft lamps that cast more shadow than brightness, creating an atmosphere of twilight, of the space between day and night, where everything is softer, quieter, more forgiving. And one by one, the elderly residents come, unburden themselves, and depart lighter than they arrived, while the community listens in a kind of meditative silence, absorbing each story without judgment, simply witnessing, simply being present for this slow unraveling of the past. As the days turn into weeks, the confessions begin to weave together, creating a larger tapestry of complicity and silence, but also of human frailty, of ordinary people making choices they thought they had to make, protecting what they thought needed protection. And the repetitive nature of these revelations brings a strange peace to Hollow Creek, the peace that comes when the unknown becomes known, when shadows are given form and substance and can finally be acknowledged. There is a rhythm to the healing, just as there was a rhythm to the concealment, but this rhythm is open, transparent, marked by the steady beat of truth-telling that happens every evening at 7, and then again as people gather in smaller groups, in living rooms and on front porches, speaking more quietly about their own small roles, their own moments of looking away, of saying nothing when perhaps they should have spoken. The younger generation listens, not with anger, but with a kind of sad understanding, recognizing that their parents and grandparents were themselves trapped in a web that none of them alone could have broken, that silence is contagious, that fear spreads as easily as truth, perhaps more easily, and that the courage to speak comes not all at once, but gradually, building on itself, each voice making space for the next. And you, listening to this story, you feel the rhythm of it in your own body, the way confession and acknowledgement create a pattern like breathing, like the beating of your heart, a pattern that requires nothing from you, that simply is, that simply continues, steady and slow and deeply, deeply soothing. The town begins to change in small, subtle ways. People make eye contact on the street who haven't looked at each other directly in years. Conversations happen in the grocery store, at the gas station, brief exchanges that acknowledge what is being revealed, that offer small gestures of understanding or apology. The rigid structure of who speaks to whom, who acknowledges what, begins to soften, to become more fluid, more natural, as though the town is learning to breathe again after holding its breath for half a century. And still the confessions come, each one a small stone added to a cairn of acknowledgement, each one another layer of truth laid over the foundation of secrets, until slowly, gradually, almost imperceptibly, the balance begins to shift, and Hollow Creek becomes more a town of truth than a town of silence. Though the process is so gentle, so incremental, that no single moment marks the transformation, only the accumulation of moments, the repetitive pattern of revelation and acceptance, again and again and again, like a mantra, like a prayer, like the words you repeat to yourself as you fall into sleep. There is a particular evening, weeks into this process of collective unburdening, when something shifts more profoundly, when the last of the founding family's descendants stands at that familiar podium and speaks about inheritances that were not just financial but moral, about wealth built on silence and land purchased with money that was never rightfully theirs, and the acknowledgement is met not with outrage, but with a quiet, collective exhale, as though the town has been waiting for this final piece, this last confession that connects all the others into a coherent whole. And in that moment, you can feel the atmosphere change, the quality of the silence becoming less tense, more peaceful, the kind of silence that comes after a storm has passed, after the thunder has rolled away into the distance, and only the soft sound of rain remains, gentle and cleansing and impossibly soothing. The families begin the long process of understanding, of speaking among themselves about what was done and why, about the choices their ancestors made and the consequences that rippled forward through generations, touching lives that seemed unconnected, but were bound together by invisible threads of causation and complicity. These conversations happen quietly, in private homes, around kitchen tables lit by soft lamps, the voices low and contemplative, not arguing but exploring, trying to understand how good people, or people who thought themselves good, could participate in such sustained deception, such calculated harm. And the answers are never simple, never satisfying in the way that simple answers are satisfying, but rather complex and human and sad. Stories of pressure and fear and the terrible weight of expectations, of protecting family above all else, of loyalty that became twisted into something darker. Something that required looking away, staying silent, pretending not to know what everyone knew. The repetitive pattern of these quiet conversations, happening in house after house, family after family, creates a kind of collective meditation, a town-wide process of reflection and acceptance that is slow, so slow as the progression from wakefulness to sleep, as gentle as the fading of light at day's end, as inevitable as the closing of tired eyes and the surrender to rest. You need not understand every detail, every nuance of these family reckonings. You need only feel the rhythm of them, the steady pulse of acknowledgement and understanding, the way truth slowly, slowly replaces shadow, the way each conversation adds another layer of peace to the town, another degree of healing, another step toward the quiet acceptance that allows for rest, for deep and dreamless rest. And as this act draws toward its close, as the confessions become less dramatic and more routine, as the pattern of revelation and acknowledgement settles into the fabric of daily life in Hollow Creek, the town begins to find a strange new peace. Not the peace of ignorance, but the peace of acceptance, of knowing the worst and choosing to move forward anyway. Choosing to build something new on the foundation of truth rather than continuing to maintain the crumbling facade of secrets. The rhythm of it all, The repetitive pattern of confession and acknowledgement, of speaking and listening, of revealing and accepting, has become so familiar now, so soothing in its predictability, that it lulls the town into a kind of collective calm, a shared understanding that this is the work that needed to be done, that is still being done, that will continue to be done for months and years to come, but that the hardest part, the breaking of the silence, has been accomplished, and what remains is the slow, gentle process of integration and healing. And you, listening to this story from a place of deep relaxation, of growing drowsiness, of that beautiful space between waking and sleeping, you feel the rhythm of Hollow Creek's transformation working on you, the repetitive cadence of truth-telling becoming a lullaby, a gentle encouragement to let go, to release, to surrender to the inevitable pull of sleep that grows stronger with each word, each phrase, each slow breath you take. The families of Hollow Creek continue their quiet conversations, their private reckonings, but these are fading now, growing softer and more distant, as your own mind drifts further from the story and deeper into rest, into that peaceful darkness where no secrets live, where nothing is hidden, where everything is simply quiet, simply still, simply sleeping. The town's transformation continues, will always continue. The work of acknowledgement and understanding is never truly finished, but it is no longer your concern. You need not witness it, you need not carry it, you need only let it fade into the background, a distant murmur of voices speaking truths that belong to them, not to you. As you sink deeper, deeper still, into the soft and endless darkness of sleep, where all stories eventually end, where all confessions are finally complete, where all truth and all shadow dissolve into the same gentle, formless, perfectly peaceful void of rest. And so the darkness welcomes you, welcomes all of us, as we return to Hollow Creek one final time, not as investigators or witnesses, but as quiet observers of a town learning to breathe again. The secrets have been spoken, the confessions have been heard, and now in the gentle aftermath, there is only the soft work of settling, of allowing truth to sink into the soil like rain after a long drought, nourishing something new, something honest, something that grows slowly in the patient earth. The old bank building stands empty now, its windows dark but no longer menacing, simply waiting, as all old buildings wait, for time to soften its edges and blur its harder memories into something gentler. Inside, where the hidden room once concealed decades of deception, there is only dust now, golden dust that drifts through shafts of pale morning light, settling and resettling in patterns that mean nothing and everything. The way all dust settles, without judgment, without memory, covering equally the places where secrets were kept and the places where truth was finally spoken. You can almost hear the silence there, not the heavy silence of concealment, but the lighter silence of release, the quiet that comes when there is finally nothing left to hide. The Wexler name no longer carries the weight it once did, not forgotten, but transformed, becoming simply another family in a town of families, all of them learning to carry their histories with less burden, less shame, more acceptance of the simple fact that people are complicated and flawed and human, always human, even in their darkest choices. And as you imagine this transformation, you feel your own body settling deeper into comfort, your muscles releasing tension you didn't know you were holding, your breath becoming slower, softer, more regular, following the gentle rhythm of a town learning to rest after decades of vigilance. The library still stands on Main Street, its brick facade the same warm red it has always been, but somehow softer now, less imposing, as though the building itself has exhaled. Inside, the shelves still hold their books, the same volumes the quiet librarian once moved between, her ears always open, her pen always ready to record what she heard in her secret ledgers. Those ledgers have been read now, their contents absorbed into the town's official history, and they rest in a climate-controlled archive where anyone can request them, though few do anymore. The need to know has been satisfied, the hunger for revelation has been fed, and what remains is simply the comfort of knowing that the truth exists, documented and acknowledged, even if we don't need to revisit it every day. Some truths are like that. They do their work simply by being known, by being possible to find if we need them, like a light switch in a familiar room that we don't need to turn on because we already know the way. And you understand this, don't you, as you sink deeper into rest, that not all knowledge needs to be actively held, that some things can simply exist in the background of our awareness, providing comfort through their presence rather than their content. The library closes each evening at 6 o'clock, and the current librarian, young, earnest, with no connection to the old secrets, locks the door and walks home through streets that feel safer now, though nothing about the physical town has changed. It is the invisible architecture that has shifted, the unspoken agreements that have dissolved, leaving only the simpler agreement that people will try, however imperfectly, to be honest with one another. And in this trying, there is peace. In this imperfect honesty, there is rest. Your breathing slows to match the rhythm of footsteps on empty sidewalks, the gentle pace of someone walking home through a town that no longer frightens them, a town that has become, once again, simply a place where people live. We drift now to the places where confessions were made, the living rooms and hospital rooms and quiet corners of the senior center, where the elderly residents of Hollow Creek unburdened themselves of decades of silence. These rooms look different now, though their furniture hasn't moved, though their walls bear the same paint. They look lighter somehow, as though confession has a physical weight that, once released, changes the very air of a space. The doctor who falsified records passed away last spring, but not before he had spoken everything he needed to say, not before he had written letters to the families affected, letters that said simply, "I'm sorry, I was afraid, I was wrong." And those letters, brief as they were, carried the weight of genuine remorse, and they were read and reread and eventually tucked away in drawers where they remain, not forgotten, but no longer the center of anyone's attention. Forgiveness is like that sometimes, not a dramatic moment of reconciliation, but a slow fading of anger, a gradual realization that holding on to pain requires energy we would rather spend on other things, on living, on the small daily pleasures that make up a life. The sheriff who looked the other way retired to a small house on the edge of town, and you can see him sometimes in the early morning, watering his garden with slow, deliberate movements, the way very old people move when they have learned that rushing serves no purpose, that everything happens in its own time, at its own pace. His garden grows tomatoes and beans and sunflowers that turn their faces toward the light, and he tends them with a patience that might be penance or might simply be peace. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes, and perhaps it doesn't matter. What matters is the growing, the tending, the daily ritual of care that replaces the daily ritual of concealment. And you listening to this, you understand the comfort of ritual, the way repeated actions can soothe the mind and settle the spirit, the way your own nightly routine brings you to this moment, to this bed, to this soft and welcoming darkness. The poisoned water has been cleaned slowly, expensively, through processes that required years of filtration and treatment and careful monitoring. The children in Hollow Creek drink from fountains now without fear, and their parents no longer warn them away from certain streams or certain wells. The land remembers, perhaps. Soil holds memory longer than people do. But even that memory is fading, diluted by rain and time and the relentless work of microorganisms breaking down what was harmful into what is neutral, then into what might even nourish. Nature is forgiving in this way, more forgiving than people, accepting poison and processing it without resentment, without the need for apology, simply doing the work of transformation, because that is what nature does. And we might learn from this, mightn't we, as we lie here in the darkness, our own bodies doing their quiet work of restoration, processing the day's tensions and transformations, filtering out what we don't need, storing what might nourish us later, all without our conscious effort, all without our needing to direct or control or even understand the process. Your body knows how to do this. Your body has always known. Just as the earth knows how to heal itself given time and space, your body knows how to rest, how to restore, how to prepare itself for another day of living. The creek that gives the town its name runs clear now, or clear enough. There are still sediments, still traces of history in the water, but nothing that poses danger, nothing that requires warning signs or worried meetings. The water simply flows as it has always flowed, moving from higher ground to lower ground, following the path of least resistance, the way all water flows, the way all things eventually flow when we stop fighting them, when we allow gravity and time and the natural order to carry us where we need to go. And you are flowing now, aren't you? Flowing down into sleep like water flowing downhill, not fighting, not resisting, simply allowing the inevitable, the natural, the gentle pull of rest to carry you deeper, deeper still. And so we return to where all stories return, to the quiet, to the darkness, to the place where nothing needs to be explained or understood or even remembered. Hollow Creek sleeps now, as all towns sleep, its secrets no longer secret, its darkness no longer dark, with concealment but simply dark with night, with the natural darkness that comes when the sun sets and will lift when the sun rises, the reliable rhythm of light and shadow that continues regardless of human drama or human pain. The houses are dark, the streetlights cast their small circles of amber glow, a cat crosses Main Street without hurrying. Somewhere a dog barks once, twice, then settles. These are the sounds of a town at peace, or as close to peace as any human place can come, which is close enough, which is all we can ask. And you are part of this peace now, part of this settling, part of this great collective exhale as the day releases its hold and the night welcomes you home. Your breath is so slow now, so soft, barely a whisper of air moving in and out, like the gentlest tide on the calmest shore. And even that image is fading, blurring, becoming less important than the simple sensation of breathing, of being, of resting here in this moment that stretches and softens and dissolves into the next moment and the next and the next. Each one identical and peaceful and empty of everything but comfort, everything but rest. The secrets of Hollow Creek have been exposed, and in their exposure they have lost their power, becoming simply stories, simply history, simply the complicated truth of human beings trying and failing and trying again to live with integrity and with one another. And you too can release your secrets, your worries, your need to understand or control or fix anything at all, because none of that is required now. None of that matters in this darkness, in this softness, in this perfect and complete surrender to sleep, to rest, to the deep and dreamless peace that waits for you, that has always been waiting for you, that receives you now with infinite gentleness as you finally let go. Thank you for listening tonight. If this story helped you drift off, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more calming stories. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you next time.